And I was like, well, the most important thing I've ever done and my most precious thing is my family. And I think it's important for women and girls to know that, do what you feel comfortable with, but if you want a family, you can make it work. You don't have to choose between career and a family.
Welcome to Femme Forte, the show that amplifies the voices of women and non-binary creatives in music and the performing arts. I'm your host, Amanda DeFries. You may know her as a legend in the percussion world, but today we get to know the story behind the resume. Julie Davila joins me to talk about building a career rooted in relationships, initiative, and patience. We explore her journey through WGI, DCI, and Percussive Arts Society, as well as the life lessons she's learned as a performer, teacher, and leader. Julie's wisdom is timeless, and this conversation is full of gems that will inspire anyone chasing longevity in their craft. I had the best time learning from her, and you will too. Welcome back to another episode of Femme Forte. Today, I am so honored to introduce the very lovely, amazing Julie Davila. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm super excited.
I'm super excited. Let me tell you, just to kind of get this out of the way, I'm sure you get this all the time, but I've been a huge fan of you. Like, the fact that the thing that's really special about this podcast is that I personally handpick every person that comes on this show, and every person that comes on the show has had some kind of personal connection to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so for me to have a full circle moment, to literally be interviewing one of my idols is just the biggest accomplishment I could feel in the world. Like, I was on cloud 9 today. I called my parents, and on the way to Houston, I was like, oh my gosh, you have no idea who I'm going to be interviewing. I'm so excited. And so I'm so grateful that we were able to make this happen and work. And I'm so excited to share your story with the rest of the world.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored by that, I'm excited to be here, and I've listened to several of your episodes, and it's just so inspiring, all the women that you've interviewed, and I've still got more to go, so I've got a lot of listening to do, but thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'm honored.
Thank you so much. It really does mean the world to me. But with that being said, for listeners who don't know who Julie Davila is, she is this amazing, world-renowned percussionist. Why don't you give an introduction to our listeners about who you are, where you're from, and how you got your start into percussion?
Okay, yeah, that's a big setup. I'm a little nervous about that. My name's Julie Davila. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. My husband Lalo and I have lived there for about 35 years now. How I got started was probably like a lot of your viewers get started. I sixth grade band, My brother played saxophone, and so when I'd go to the concerts, and a lot of the band directors would say to me, what are you going to play when you come in? And I was like, I'm playing drums. Like, from day one, it was like, I'm playing drums.
Yeah.
And so I've just been really fortunate. That part of my life, the early, middle school, I was in Indiana, and then my dad was transferred to Kansas City, and I ended up going to Blue Springs High School, being a part of that program. And then I went to college for 2 years in Missouri Western, and then transferred to North Texas. I always wanted to go to North Texas. When I was in high school, I used to go to Maynard Ferguson concerts a lot, and he would introduce the band, and the whole band was from, at that time, it was North Texas State University. And I was like, what is this North Texas State? What is this place? And so I had this dream of going, but I didn't think I was ready for it. So I went to the school in Missouri first, got a couple years under my belt, and had a really good teacher that kind of pushed me to go dream a little bigger. Ended up in North Texas, which I know a lot of people on your podcast have gone to North Texas. It's this incredible community. And I sort of fell in love. I'd always been a fan of marching percussion, and I, in high school, did all the drumline things, and it was an important part of what I did, but I also played a lot of drum set. I didn't hardly play mallets at all until I went to college, oddly, and then I had a lot of catching up to do. But so when I got to North Texas, and the drumline was like a big deal there, started getting heavily involved in that, and that's kind of what probably launched me into kind of what I do today, which is more marching percussion. So today, I teach adjunct at Middle Tennessee State University. I've been there teaching the drumline, writing and organizing, everything drumline for about 15 years. I've had a private studio there of anywhere from like 8 to 20 students. depending on the years. And then, I do quite a bit of other things outside of Middle Tennessee State University. I judge for WGI, judge for DCI. That's kind of where my career has gone, and raised 2 kids along the way, 2 girls that, amazing that, we were able to do all that and kind of keep at it. So I taught middle school for 3 years. I thought that might be important just because I think everybody only sees everybody's like highlight reel,
right?
Like the end. But I was in the trenches. I taught middle school for 3 years as a band director. And then I ran a percussion program for a couple of them for 15 years, high school programs, and, competed in WGI. And I feel like that's where I really kind of cut my teeth as a writer and a designer. So,
yeah. So did you always, even just starting at music education, did you always know that you wanted to pursue music education first before continuing on your path?
I think so. It's been a while. I definitely was very tunnel vision. I always knew music was going to be in my life, and I don't remember thinking about doing anything else other than just like music. Even when I was like super young, before I got into a formal band program, I was at home like, I don't know how my family had a tambourine, but there was a tambourine in the house, and I would try to like prop it up and make a pedal. Mm-hmm. Try to make a bass drum pedal on this tambourine, and then I get out like pot, like Tupperware or whatever, and I try to make these like quasi drum sets before I had any of that, formally available to me. So I think I was just super nerdy in that regard. And the only other thing that I had an equal passion to is sports. I played basketball in high school at fairly high level, and but at that point, there was nothing past maybe college for athletics or being a coach, but I feel like I kind of get to be that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You kind of get to be a coach, so I get kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, speaking of your tunnel vision, what was your end goal, let's say in high school or even college, and how has that, quote unquote, shifted to how your career has progressed?
I don't think I really had an end goal, to be honest. I think I just head down, do work, try to do good work. Whatever opportunity kind of came my way, I'd think, oh, okay, maybe I'll go that way. Life zigs and zags for sure, and so just being open to it. But I didn't really have this formal like target to do all the things I've been able to do today, which is amazing because sometimes I think you just have to let life unfold a little bit. So, I don't think I had like a firm. I do remember distinctly at North Texas one time, Dave Weckel came to do a clinic. We always had a lot of people dropping in and out, to do clinics. And it was probably my first semester there, so I was overwhelmed. We had David Friedman came in that semester, and Lee Howard Stevens. The ensemble was playing at PASIC. There was just like all these guest artists in, and I was just blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to live this life. And I remember Weckel being on stage giving a clinic. I do remember like, that would be a fun life, is to like get to the point where you're good enough to do clinics and travel. I just remember that being sort of like, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was like, life was unfolding, different opportunities would open up, and, I would say yes to some things that was really scary, but figured out along the way.
Yeah. You mentioned, I actually watched an interview that you did with Ensemble Block at PASIC a year or two ago, talking about how networking and making relationships is like a big aspect to, quote unquote, moving up. Now you're the current president of the Percussive Arts Society. That's like a huge thing, especially in the percussion world. So can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to make those connections and network, and how that's been able to help you push that path forward?
Yeah, I think networking definitely is important. I don't think of it necessarily in the moment as networking. I think about building relationships, at PASIC, at PAS, I started I think I was 27 or 28 when I was asked to be the chair of the marching committee. And I was like, why am I being asked to be the chair of the marching committee? At that point, though, the chair of the marching committee at PAS had a lot of work. It was a lot of work because we were hosting the drumline competition. That was still like pre-WGI. And so if you're going to be the chair of the marching percussion committee, you're not going to see PASIC, basically. You're going to be there, but you're not going to see anything. You got to be willing to just like let it all go.
Yeah.
And you're going to, the work that you do year round, it's a lot more than any other. At that time, it was a lot more than any other of the chairs' work. Today, lots of great chairs. They're doing tons of great initiatives. But at that point, it was like that was the worker bee position. And I think they thought, she'll do it. I think they're like, who will do that much work? Oh, I think you'll do it. I had been sitting in on a lot of committee meetings. And then I became a member of the committee. And I just think, I guess somebody recognized that I would probably, from a work ethic standpoint, figure it out. And so I just remember being handed this folder that was like this big. It's like, you are now the chair. And so I did that for almost a decade. I did that for 9 years. And I mean, in those rooms, it was such an amazing experience because I got to know, Dennis DeLucia, that's a whole nother story of Dennis's impact in my life. But sitting at that table at the time, we were like Tom Hannum, Dennis DeLucia, Jim Campbell, like all my idols that I looked up to, and I've got to not only just listen to them in those rooms and the wisdom that they offered at the time, but form relationships too, and build trust. And so I didn't necessarily think of it as networking. I was just like excited to be there and excited to be a part of it. And through those, those kinds of experiences, those 9 years working with the executive directors, a couple different executive directors at PAS, they learned to trust you and give you more, a little bit more leadway. And then there's so many administrative things you figure out along the way. So you've kind of got, everything's growing a little bit, like your administrative chops are growing, your relationships are building. And then that just will lead to the next thing, And then I sat on the board of directors for 2 terms at PAS. Again, got to know more people. I mean, that room was intense. That was, the Neil Grover, Mike Balter, like Remo Belli. It's funny when I was growing up, I tell this story all the time. I didn't know those people were people sometimes. I didn't know Remo was Remo Belli. It was named after Remo Belli. I just thought it was a drum company.
Yeah.
So put the face to the name, to the brand, you're just like, wow, these are people. Mike Balter, amazing, And so you build community that way, and just be nice, show up, do the work. There's plenty of people that could have done any of that I did. I tell my students all the time today, it's really like follow through, be nice, be somebody that people want to be around and work with. So that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I could speak to that even I'm from Texas, and every TMEA I would go to. Every TMEA except for this year I had never missed. And that was really important to me because from a freshman in high school, I would just go up to all the different vendors, specifically like Tap Space and Roll Off and Vivforth and IP and all these other, awesome companies. And I would just be in awe of the company and connect with the people there. Yeah. And at the time I was like, I'm just, a high school percussionist, just wanted to look and check things out more. But as I've gotten older, I say this all the time, but the reason I have the job that I have now, I believe, is because I came up to the owners of Ultimate Drill Book at TMEA. It was kind of a full circle moment when in 2019, I believe, or 2020, one of the two, I came up to their booth and I just took pictures of their booth and emailed them and was like, hey, I'm a media person. I saw your booth. Here's some free pictures of your booth. If you need any more media services in the future, let me know. And then, fast forward to a couple years later, I applied for an actual media position that they had. And first interview, they're like, hey, you're Amanda, right? I remember you coming up to me at the booth. And still to this day, when I go to like a Midwest or anything like that, I'll go to mostly the percussion vendors. And now they remember who I am. And it's awesome to be able to work with people, one, who remember you, but to build on those relationships, like you said.
And the important part about that is you took initiative too, though, right? Like you didn't just meet him, you followed up with something, you know? And not that at that time you were probably, the intentionality was to lead to a job, but you're just like building your web, you know? Being memorable, being nice, sending out, and taking an extra step. So,
right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, and speaking further to that, I mean, I'm sure you know the Girls March team. I mean, I reached out to Rachel as soon as I got hired with UDB, and I was like, oh my gosh, we should partner. And then that led into me going to their camps and me interviewing their staff. And then, you know, it kind of turned into this bigger deal. And so I've been very, very fortunate. One of the biggest things I say is with privilege comes responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
And building a longer table. And so that's essentially what this podcast is for. And so much of what you have done and your career path, like I align with so well. Like when you mentioned playing tenors and drum set, I mean, that was me. Yeah. That was me in high school.
You're a tenor player. That's amazing.
I was a tenor player. All the way through high school, which leads me to show you this. This book is let me just say, I used and abused this book.
My gosh.
In high school. And so I actually, my sophomore year in high school, I actually played, let's see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Let's see. I played, I believe, yes, I played Batteries Not Included for UIL and got a 1 at state.
Got a 1. Amazing.
So yeah, it was just, like I said, full circle moment for me. Like this is something I lived and breathed being a tenor player. And I kid you not, as soon as I found out that we were recording, I drove this week to my parents' house, who's in San Antonio, and I currently live in Austin. So I drove to San Antonio. I was like, I need this book.
Oh, you went there to get the book?
I went literally just for the book. I met my dad at the courthourhouse because he works there, and we did like a quick drop off session. I told him I am committed. I was like, this book is so important to me, and I like FaceTime my brother. I was like, I need you to find this book in my childhood bedroom. It's so important. And so
I just brought you a new one.
And so I just wanted to like show my gratitude and how important that you have been specifically in my life and as a big influence in the percussion community.
Oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
All right. I mean, look at this. Look at this book. Wow. That's great. That's amazing. You know, this book has been out 1997.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that because I wrote it the year leading up to the birth of our second daughter. Mm-hmm. And we were right in the end stages, and I had her, and then the roll-off guys were like, we got to get this out. We got to get this out. We got to do, you know, the last stages of like editing and so what they did is they brought all their computers, and back in that day, the computers were like way big. They brought everything. It was like home base to our house and set up in our kitchen. And there's like 3 computers, and everybody was proofing and passing. And then my daughter was like, I don't know, 3 weeks old, you know? So, yeah, I'll never forget that. That was a lot of fun. It took me about a year to write that. But yeah, I feel really good about it. I just can't believe it's, you know, continues to do pretty well.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that it's helped, you know, performers along the way.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I mean, getting a jump start in your career to actually have a book published and multiple musical pieces published, like what is that process like? Because I think so often, at least from my perspective, you know, we talk so much about the destination, but not necessarily the journey to get there.
Sure.
And so that's something that I really like to highlight a lot on this podcast. So can you share a little bit about like maybe where the inspiration from this book or other pieces that you've written or created came from, and then what that process to actually getting it published is like?
Sure. Well, I mean, I had no idea that I'd ever get to the point where anybody would want to even be interested in anything, you know, that I wrote. I grew up playing in method books and things like that. So it wasn't really one of those things on my radar. It's just an opportunity that kind of rolled out. So, that was my first book. And the Roll-Off company is based out of Nashville. And Chris Crockrell and my husband went to school together at North Texas. And Chris left North Texas to go on an Ice Capade tour, to play drums on an Ice Capade tour the semester before I got there. So I never met him there. When we moved to Nashville, Lalo kept saying, "Oh, we got to go. You got to meet this guy. We went to school together." He ended up marrying a skater, and they lived in Nashville. And so we started hanging out with them a little bit. He was playing drums with Louise Mindrell, and they were starting up Roll-Off. They were just getting started, and so they were looking for people to. They were writing a lot, but they wanted to pull in more writers for the company. And they had come to a drumline show that my drumline was competing at. And being drum set players, Chris Brooks was a drum set player. He really liked the way I wrote my tenors for my tenors. And I think that came specifically from playing drum set, because when you're playing drum set, you're moving everything, you're moving rhythms. And so I wrote tenors kind of like a drum set player. And so he's like, "Sister Jules, there's no tenor books out there. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Well, I never played tenors officially, like in a drum line. Are you sure you want me to do this?" And they're like, "We love your style of writing. I think you'd have something to offer." And again, I think I came back to that, just like PAS marching chair, like, "You'll do it." You're somebody that'll do it. So I said yes. And that process was, I took a set of tenors home and put them in my basement. And every night I would go down there and just learn better facility on how to get around, be more thoughtful than, I wrote a lot for tenors at that point, but I'd not really broken things down. And I'm a real pedagogy nerd and a real fundamentals nerd. So like, I like to think strategically, how do you get from point A to point B? So I was like, okay, the premise of this book is I want someone to open page 1, not know anything about tenors, and to be able to understand it without a teacher, to be systematically designed so that somebody without a teacher, because I know there's so many kids out there that don't have what we all had, right? They're in some rural community and their band director hands them a book. How do you get from point A to point B? So I just kind of went through that process. It took about a year. And then I also, if you look at that book, I had some great mentors on that. Scott Johnson, Paul Rennick. Who else is on that? Tom Ungst. Yeah, those 3 guys. So I chose those 3 and reached out to them first, not knowing that they would agree, but because of where they were regionally at the time. So Ungst was East Coast, Scott was West Coast, and Paul was like Midwest. So I thought, at that point, there was a lot of interpretation, like West Coast interp and East Coast interp. And I was like, I want this book to not sway one way or another. And the best way to do that is put a committee of people together that are amazing, that I can send a material to and be like, what do you think about this? What's your feedback? And also just kind of validate I'm on the right track, So they were amazing. I would, write a chapter. I'd do some, write some things, and I'd send it off and just ask for feedback. I didn't want to lead anybody in the wrong way either. If a kid picked up that book and was like, I want to audition for drum corps, well, it needs to be relevant, material that's going to put them in a position to be successful. So, yeah, so I did that for it took about a year, and then it was kind of funny because towards the end of that year, I was pregnant. So I'm glad there weren't any pictures back in the day of pregnant Julie trying to work out the last couple solos in the book, But yeah, it was an amazing ride. I learned so much. Tom and Scott and Paul were just gracious, and I learned a lot through the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of that, being as successful as you are, you also were building your family at the same time. I think one of the things that I think was really important that you shared with me kind of off camera was the fact that, many of us specifically, being in such a male-dominated industry are so driven. And a lot of things, both whether it's percussion, whether it's music education, anything, a lot of times we're so career-driven and focused that we don't even think that starting a family is possible. And you were able to do it. And so was starting and building a family something that you kind of always knew that you wanted alongside your career, or was it something that you're like, I'm going to actually make this work?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I really don't know the exact answer. I know that family is important to me, and it was I had an amazing family, amazing support system growing up. If I start tearing up, I can't hardly talk about my family without tearing up. But I was like probably the most driven person, that at that point that you would meet. I mean, I was just so career oriented. I had a little fuel, I always wanted, like when I went to North Texas, like no one had marched. I wasn't really ever going after I didn't want to be like a great girl percussionist. I just want to be known as a good percussionist. But I knew that in that, like I had to work extra hard, right? And so I was always like really driven to like not prove myself, but kind of prove myself.
Yeah.
And so I might get off on a tangent here, but I was so driven, and I don't really know I don't know when that light bulb went off. Is like, I do know that I didn't want it to pass me by. And my husband and I talked about it, and we're like, well, I had been teaching at a high school, Overton High School, and we'd been doing some WGI, and we were pretty successful. And the important part was having him as a partner, too, because he was on board with being helpful, like taking a lot of the responsibility, too. But we were just like, there's never going to be a good time, and we're going to work together, and we know that we want this, and so let's just literally just figure it out along the way. So it wasn't like this line in the sand decision, like we got to do this right now. But I had our oldest at 28, and then at 32 had our youngest, and that was like 28. When I was 28, I was in the thick of it. I think we won, Overton won a world championship, WGI World Championship in 96. Our oldest was 3. So I didn't even know how we did it, to be honest. Like, because I know I was at rehearsal a lot. Lala was amazing. But as I look and thinking about it a lot, and when you reached out to me about this podcast, you like, we want to highlight like all your amazing career things, like. And I was like, well, the most important thing I've ever done and my most precious thing is my family. And I think it's important for women and girls to know that, do what you feel comfortable with. But if you want a family, you can make it work. You don't have to choose between career and a family,
Right. So
you figure things out. Are there going to be ebb and flows? Are there going to be seasons where maybe you're a little less active? But in our industry nowadays, particularly, it's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities, freelance opportunities, so you can kind of be a little bit more control, of those seasons. I had a really good friend, Ward Durrett, a great percussionist. A lot of the listeners probably will remember Ward, but I remember him saying to me one time, he said, because I think I was worried about like backing off a little bit. And he's like, Julie, you've already done it from nothing. You've already gotten to this point from nothing. And now, like, so if you take a pause or you pull back a little bit, you'll be able to come back to it. You've already built your relationships. You've been in the trenches. You've done the work, So I just kind of trusted that. I thought that was great advice. And I'm so glad. I mean, I can't imagine life without him.
That's awesome. I mean, to your point as well, I think one of the important things to note, especially in the day and age that we live now, is that slow and steady wins the race.
100%. It is the long game. I think about that. I was listening to one of your episodes recently, too, and I think it was Sandy Rennick was like, just you got to put in the work. You got to do the work. It was about company sponsorships, kids that want to come out of college and get a sponsorship, be it, And I mean, that was never really on my radar. It was like literally head down, do the work. And then those are results that come from that, but it's a long game. It's a long game for sure.
Yeah. I think it goes, back to that relationship building. I think a lot of times, especially with any quote unquote endorsed artists or influencers, we always think about chasing the company.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I need to get X amount of viewers or X amount of followers and then I'll make it. But I think, and especially that's really important to me, even in the podcast, is for me, it's the relationship is not transactional. Just
Right.
because you come on a guest, I'm like, wow, you're benefiting the podcast, whatever. No, like for me, that's the whole reason why the people I handpick are so personal and even, you know, the opportunity to meet you in person, it's building that relationship. I mean, the amount of relationships that I've been able to build within the podcast has surmounted the success that I was even able to build. And so I think that speaks a lot to your success as well, as you've been able to build multiple relationships within your career.
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, you're absolutely on your way. Like all the great things you're doing. So it's exciting to see that. You know, I love to see that those next generations of women, you know, can I say kicking butt?
Yes.
Kicking butt.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I wanted to touch on was your connection with WGI and DCI. I mean, I think I saw a news article or something, or a press release maybe, released at the beginning of this year saying that you are the new DCI judge administrator, correct?
Yeah.
And so with your, you know, passion for marching percussion, even going from, you know, now we've talked about teaching to kind of clinicking and also, you know, writing and composing. So now entering even judging, that's like a whole nother domain.
Yeah. Well, the way I got in is kind of part two to the family thing. Is the way I got into judging is when we had our kids and they were starting to get busy in their activities. I've sensed that I didn't want to spend more time with other people's kids than my kids. You know, that was really important. And that's hard to do in this activity, particularly when we love being teachers. Like, I love being a teacher, you know? So I noticed to be at the competitive level that we were kind of at as a high school program. To do that, it was like 7 days a week, 20 hours a day.
Essentially,
essentially to stay that competitive, right? And so I had to say, I'm going to take a year off and just figure things out. Like, I felt like I was getting too busy with other things outside of family. I'm going to take a year off. And Mark Thurston with WGI actually got wind of that at like maybe TMEA or PASIC or something, and he was like, wait, we want how about getting into judging instead of taking a year off? And I was like, oh, I'm not ready. I don't think I'm ready. And I said, so he was really encouraging me. And I said, I tell you what, let me, in this year that I'm going to take off, let me do some training. Let me kind of dip my toe in that water and see if I like it, see if you guys like me, like if I feel like you feel like I can do a good job. So I did some training things with the WGI guys. That was intense. But they were really positive, and I kind of started, I really enjoyed it. I felt like it's another way to give back. You're like a teacher for like 8 minutes. You know, you kind of get to be that outside person, new eyes, new ears, to be helpful to a program. And I had been on the other side of so many tapes. You know, I had tons of great examples of great media. We had tapes back in the day. They were like these square things. And I had really good examples. I have 3 tapes that I've saved forever, and it was Mark Thurston's and Ralph Hardiman and probably Dennis DeLucia. It was the year we won, and it was just so fun. Of course, you're going to love those tapes. But I also had examples of tapes that I was less moved by, right? And so I kind of wanted, when I started judging, I was like, this is a way for me to give back in a different way. So I got into that. I really enjoyed that. And so I was in the WGI realm for a while. The folks at DCI, specifically Nola Jones, asked me 2 or 3 times along those years, how about DCI? You're judging for WGI. And I was like, no, I can't add. I'm not ready. I want to be a mom. You know, I got enough going on. So for a couple of those asks, I wasn't ready. I didn't think it was the right time. And then I'm trying to think when my first year was, maybe 2015. They came back and asked again, and I said, yeah, I'll give it a season. You know, we'll see how I feel. We'll see if you guys feel like I'm ready. Once again, I was like, I'm not sure, you know, if I'm ready. And I have so many, you know, colleagues that I judge with in WGI that we sit on the same, you know, we make tapes together. We're judges, but they're the teachers in DCI. So there's a relationship. Like I was like, that's going to be tricky, you know. And I want to test the waters and see how we all feel about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of ended up loving it. And I got some good feedback, decent feedback. And the DCI team has just been really, really supportive. And then I guess last year, they asked me to jump on as a JL, which is like the percussion caption on the judges' side. So it's just kind of like overseeing the percussion roster and helping. Mostly, a lot of people don't need any oversight. Obviously, there's some really, really great judges there, but just like being those eyes and ears for that specific caption, you know, and the biggest responsibility there, I think, is this providing training materials and making sure training materials are current and that we're all having these conversations, that we're all growing and growing along with the designers to provide, you know, great positive feedback for these designers so there's trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. As someone who kind of lives in that world currently with what my job is, it's really interesting to get kind of like a behind the scenes look of really how do all the pieces of the puzzle kind of like work together. So it's a really great insight. One of the things I also want to mention as you were sharing your experience was, you know, a lot of times kind of going back to the whole chasing thing, I think one of the most interesting things is about you is like not only are you able to put up like firm work-life balance boundaries with, you know, your family and you know, making time and spending time for your family, but you also have the wonderful opportunity of people are calling you. You are not knocking down on other people's doors, as you just kind of mentioned. Like people are asking you and bringing these opportunities to you, and I think that says a lot about, one, your work ethic, but also the quality of work that you've been able to put to have those opportunities presented to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I will say that caring, the amount of care that I feel for these activities and for these kids, you know, even as a judge, you know, I still get nervous. Like I've judged in like 25 years, you know, like I'll sit down in that seat and I'm nervous, you know, and I think it's nervous because I just want to do what's right for the kids, you know, and every single student performer, let's say in DCI that's out there, like, you know, they all put in a ton of hours. They all put in the blood, sweat, and tears, no matter what corps you're in, you know, so we owe it to those kids to give them our very best. Whether that's like great media or trust that the numbers management is really like, you know, as spot on as we feel like we can give, you know, that those truthful ranking and ratings and things like that. So yeah, I think it's just caring, really. I don't really know why I've been given some of the opportunities that I have along the way, but I do know that if I say yes to something, I'm going to care about it a lot and I'm going to do my very best. You know, I'm going to due diligence at all times.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Well, We're just about to wrap up here, so I just have a couple lasting questions for you.
Sure.
First being, if you were to think about your younger self, whether it was you starting a family for the first time, whether it was you even starting percussion for the first time, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oof, my younger self. I think... It's going to sound so cliche, but I think if there's something you want to do, even if there's no example of it, like I didn't really have an example other than like, I'll really date myself here though, but like Karen Carpenter, you know, the drum set player on TV, you know, and then like Sheila E. and like I had very few examples. The one thing I did have, I had parents that were like 100% supportive. And to this day, I always thank them because I'm like, they didn't have an example to look at to go, oh, she should continue down this road, right? Because you can do A, B, and C. They didn't see any of that either, but they still like supported me. So I think if you want to go after something, you have a passion for it, and that's in your DNA, go for it. You know, make it happen. Figure out a way to make it happen. I do think that there's other things along the way that you have to do, you know, like you have to have that grit and work ethic and all that. But I think just start. I think a lot of people think about, oh, I'll never be able to do that. And they see that, like I said, that end game, that highlight reel. But the steps along the way, the incremental steps along the way, we're just doing, right?
Yeah.
So I think just keep at it, go after it. And there'll be roadblocks. There'll be little roadblocks along the way. But I think in our industry, what I'm seeing and what I've felt is I've had so many people champion me, along the way. And I would hope that, particularly, I feel like the culture is solid. It's really good right now for up and coming students, particularly female students. They're seeing a lot more participating, being supported, being encouraged, being championed. So I think just keep, hopefully finding your champions along the way and hang on to that and just keep, working hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question I'll leave us with is, what fulfills you most in your life now, and what do you hope to continue doing that fulfills your life and your career?
Wow, you ask amazing questions. That is like, what's most fulfilling? Most fulfilling, family always first and foremost. I love being a mom. It's my absolute favorite thing to do. So like anytime my kids are in Chicago and Los Angeles, so I don't get to see them often, but just being in their lives and visiting and talking and being a mom still kind of. They're adults, but that's where my heart and soul is. From a career standpoint, I think I've always had the mindset of I like to try to do my part in making things better, right? Like the old drum corps motto when you'd go to school, it was always like, leave it better than you found it. Right. And so I feel like anything that I try to, that I'm a part of, that's my mantra, like leave it better than you found it. And I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to like growth mindset things. So like rethinking things, like Adam Grant has a book called Think Again. Mm-hmm. That I love that, And so like, even when I went into like presidency of PAS or in some of the leadership of PAS, we're doing great things. Okay, let's rethink it. How could we reimagine this? How could, ask curious questions, like how can we even make this better? How can we grow? Even if it's like one little, push in this direction, and now with like DCI, same thing with the judge administrator position, which I'm in right now as a designated successor to John Phillips. So I have a year of John mentoring me, but I had that same mindset, like, all right, it's amazing. It's been, there's so many good things happening. How can we make it a little better?
Exactly.
And so for me, that's really fulfilling. If I can feel like I did a little something to make something a little better, leave it a little better than we found it, then that like, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and being on the show. I'm so excited for our listeners to hear all about your amazing story. Where can our listeners and viewers find you? Any social media, website that you want to plug?
Yeah. So, social media, I'm Instagram, I'm Sista Jules. 93, 97, birth of my kids. And Julie Sutton Davila on Facebook, although I'm sure this generation, nobody's on Facebook. And my husband and I have a website now that we're starting to publish some of our own stuff as well. So I don't even know, laladavila.com. Or eventually we're going to move it to davila.com or something. But I'm accessible for sure. So reach out, say hello, and I love to follow. I'm following a number of like young female percussionists now. And so just let me know you're out there and I'll be your champion too. So
awesome. Thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Super fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Femme Forte. I hope this conversation left you feeling inspired, empowered, and just a little more connected to your own creative journey. Be sure to follow today's guests and support the incredible work they're doing. You can find all their links in the episode description. And if you enjoy this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, leave a rating or review, and follow Femme Forte wherever you get your podcasts.